And that's the position that, we face still at the present time. Now, I think in Ireland, in the context of Ireland, we in the Socialist Party had shown in action how a tax like this and how the exploitation of the workers and the race to the bottom could be fought. In 2005, we discovered a major Turkish multinational company in Ireland called Gamma, which had 1,000 imported workers from Turkey, had got huge contracts for power stations, major road developments, etc., from government money, Irish government money and EU money. Workers, quite like the Lindsay situation in one sense, they were isolated in horrible sheds where they were accommodated on the building sites. They got their food, the accommodation in these horrible barracks. They spoke no English, they were utterly isolated, and incredibly, they were being paid €2.20 an hour for an 80-hour week in most cases. And incredibly also, that regime had gone on for 4 years without being outed or discovered in any significant way, though there were some suspicions. But we, in February of 2005, were able to use the position that we had in the Irish Parliament at that stage to burst this story into the open. We weren't absolutely certain, but we were fairly sure. So we used privilege to put it out there. And it caused a massive shock and reverberations, but also brought some of the Turkish workers on board and began a tremendous strike of about 400 of the 1,000 workers, braving huge pressure from the management, intimidation, and all the insecurity that migrant workers have. And for a 2-month hard battle was fought, also with political representation in the Parliament and pressure on the government, but giving rise to a huge victory for those workers and for workers generally. Because what we said in the course of that action is a victory for these Turkish workers is a guarantee against the race to the bottom. It means if we stop this example of exploitation, then the bosses are stopped in their tracks from further undermining the wages and conditions, whether it's the Irish-born workers or migrant workers in the country. Incredibly, we found 30 million euros that Gamma had stolen from the workers, secreted in banks in Amsterdam. That was now handed back to the workers, including overtime. And Gamma, frankly, in the Irish labour movement is a template of how you should approach. And many of the tremendous action we've seen of the workers here in Lindsay, which I followed as closely as possible, of trying to unite the workers and the tremendous unity that was achieved, that really shows again here how this can go forward. Comrades, very briefly further, because these are backgrounds to the Euro election, which I want to deal with briefly as well. But in 1994, 5 and 6, we also had a massive community-wide campaign in the Greater Dublin area against a new tax, a water tax, that was implemented. We led a movement of opposition against that based on the boycott of this tax, and had tens of thousands of people refusing to pay, being threatened and intimidated with water disconnection to their homes, etc., etc. In short, we had a massive movement of opposition, of people power. And after a 3-year struggle in December, and by the way, how the political and the industrial or the community goes very much and must go very much hand in hand was shown in this struggle as well, where at the height of it in April of 1996, there was a by-election in an area where the movement was quite strong, and against all the establishment parties, we came within 250 votes of winning that by-election, only 250 votes short, creating massive political pressure on the government of the day and on all the establishment parties, who a few months later, with a continuing boycott, put up the white flag and in December of 1996 abolished the water tax. And the importance of that for the living standards of ordinary working people in Ireland is that a government minister said a few months ago, if that tax had not been abolished, it would be €800 per year now on each household, on each family, which against the background of the cuts and the slashing and burning that's going on would be a further huge imposition. Now, I give these examples to show and to blend in with the speakers who were here before and giving like crucial examples of the struggle at the present time. But also, these, along with the crisis, featured prominently in the Euro election in Dublin on June the 5th. The capital city, the whole of the capital, 1.3 million people, is one constituency. There were 4 seats outgoing. Fianna Fáil, the main Tory party, Fine Gael, the second Tory party, the Labour Party, quite like Clare's or Brown's party in terms of economic ideas, and Sinn Féin had a seat each. The amount was reduced to 3 seats, so that one of the sitting MEPs was going to lose out. And you can imagine then the nature of the battle between them as they battled for their careers and position against that particular background. It was you try to get out of the line of fire if you were in a common interview situation in a media sense, that you didn't come between 2 or 3 of the candidates as they fought vehemently for their positions. But we decided in the Socialist Party that we had to stand in that election. And we stood on a number of things with 2 key themes. The need for a fight back. Working people should not pay for the crisis, they did not cause it. We demanded a fight back, we demanded absolutely no cuts whatsoever. And a fight back against that. And the second thing was the idea of a socialist alternative. Capitalism had failed. Capitalism was now wreaking havoc on the living standards and the services of working people, and we needed a socialist alternative, as opposed to the capitalists and the trade union leaders and the labour leaders all trying to find variations of the system itself to try and come out of the crisis which the system in fact has caused. And we put forward a radical programme against the financial crisis, for the nationalisation of the banks, but not a bailout position, but under democratic public workers' ownership and control, and also the nationalisation of major companies which were sacking workers. And there was one huge example in Dublin at the time, a company called SR Technics, which had 1,150 highly skilled aircraft maintenance workers at Dublin Airport, was privatised 10 years ago by the government of the day. And a few months before the election, the new multinational owners arrived in from Switzerland, convened the workers in a huge hangar at the airport, and spent 15 minutes with them to tell them that the entire operation was being moved out of Ireland, that they all had lost their jobs. Now, we demanded immediately the renationalisation of that particular plant to save all the works. They had 3 years' work orders of aircraft to be maintained on the books, 60 young apprentices as well that were to be salvaged in that process. Now,